All right, chapter 23. The last thing we read was that Gregor was going to bring the Bane to Ripred. So let's see what happens. Ares insisted Gregor sleep for a few hours. When he woke, they began their trek into the tunnels. It was narrow initially, but soon opened up into a space wide enough for Ares to fly, which was a relief since Gregor's arms were aching from carrying the Bane. They stopped to break for a drink at a stream in a cavern. Remember you this place? Asked Ares. No, said Gregor. Wait, maybe. They had stopped here to rest when Ripred was their guide. Is this where Henry tried to kill Ripred in his sleep? Yes, and you stepped between them, said Ares. I couldn't figure out if you knew Henry was going to try to kill him, said Gregor. I did not. It was one of the many things Henry neglected to mention to me, said Ares. Gregor could tell he didn't want to talk about it anymore. As they flew on, the Bane began to whimper for its mother again. How bizarre this must all seem to the baby rat. Flying through the air on a bat, being held by a human, knowing something very wrong had happened to his mother. Gregor fed it the rest of the chocolate bar from the labyrinth. He had one left, but decided to save it for a real emergency. The smell of rotten eggs began to permeate the tunnel, and Gregor knew that they were fast approaching the cavern where they had first encountered the spiders. Treflex and Gox. Ares landed at the entrance and they went in on foot. The sulfur-scented water still rained down the walls. There on the floor was the husk of Treflex's body, all that remained of the spider after his companion Gox had drained its insides. Want to rest? Asked Gregor. Not here, said Ares. Good, Gregor said, even though what lay ahead was nasty. The tunnel dripped with evil-smelling water down on them. Ripred had taken them through it with the idea of concealing their scent from the rats, and they had certainly reeked of rotten egg when they came out. This trip was, as if possible, less comfortable. Gregor had been wearing a hard hat his first trip, which had offered some protection. He had not been injured. He had been eager to find his father instead of dreading the moment that they next meet. And he had been carrying boots on his back, not a rat in his arms. Poor Ares had ridden on Temp's back before because the tunnel was so narrow and long. Now he limped along, scraping his wings on stone outcropping, ducking his head in the eye-stinging drizzle. In minutes they were all soaked. The rat mewed miserably. Gregor trudged along, putting one foot in front of the other. He and Ares did not speak the entire time they were in the tunnel, although it was many hours. When eventually Gregor's knees gave way under him and he sat on the ground hard. He expected the Bane, who'd been squirming for most of the trip, to try to run off. Instead, it burrowed up under his shirt and pressed against his chest. Ares slumped against a rock next to him. Are there rats around? Asked Gregor. About 10 are coming now, but that is what we want, right? Said Ares. That is what we want, said Gregor. Neither of them made any attempt to move as the rats surrounded them. And then he saw the diagonal scar that split Ripred's face. If I'd known you were coming, I'd fix the place up, said Ripred. Don't bother, we won't be here long. I just came to give you a present, said Gregor. For me, you shouldn't have, said Ripred. You brought me Twitch tip, said Gregor. Not because I expected anything in return, said Ripred. His nose was beginning to move, his eyes fastened on the lump under Gregor's shirt. You're getting something anyway, Gregor said, and pulled up his shirt. The Bane slid out on the floor in front of him. Every rat except Ripred gasped. Seeing another rat, the baby started to run to Ripred, but it jumped back at the violent hiss that issued from his mouth and scurried over to Ares. You don't like little kids, do you? Said Gregor. Ripred had hissed at Boots, too. Not this one in particular, snarled Ripred. What's it doing here? I didn't know where else to take it, said Gregor. You were supposed to kill it, said Ripred. But I didn't. I brought it to you, said Gregor. What makes you think I won't kill it, said Ripred. I don't think you'd kill a pup, said Gregor. Ha! Ripred said, pacing angrily in a circle. Gregor wasn't sure whether that meant yes or no. Okay, how about I don't think you'd kill the Bane, because if you do, you'll never get the other rats to follow you, said Gregor. It was lucky he'd been sitting down, because Gregor smacked back onto the rock so fast he would have cracked his skull open if he'd been standing up. As it was, it hurt plenty. Ripred pinned him on the ground with one paw as he bared his fangs at Gregor's face. And have you also thought that under the circumstances I might very well kill you? Gregor swallowed hard. The answer was yes, but instead of admitting it, he looked Rip Red dead in the eye and said, "Okay, but I think I better warn you that if we fight, you've only got a 50-50 chance of winning." "I do," said Rip Red. It was enough to distract him for a second. "And why is that?" "Because I'm a rager too," said Gregor. Rip Red began to laugh so hard he fell over on his side. The other rats were laughing too. Gregor didn't even feel like sitting up. "It's true," he said to the ceiling. "Twitch Tip smelled it on me. Ask Ares." No one asked Ares. They were all laughing too hard. That was one thing you had to give the rats. They enjoyed a good joke. Finally, Rip Red pulled himself together and swept his tail around, shooting the other rats away. "Go," he said. "Leave me to them. Or leave them to me." "All right, Rager," he said when they were all gone. "Tell me what happened and don't leave out any details. I left you after our sorry excuse for an echolocation lesson and then I ran into Nerissa," said Gregor. He told Rip Red everything about the fireflies, the squid tentacles, about saving Twitchtip at the whirlpool and losing Pandora at the island, about the serpents and the tankard and taking refuge in the cave, and then found he couldn't go on. "Yes, you six were in the cave. And what about the others?" asked Rip Red. "They were lost," Ares said. After it was clear Gregor wasn't going to answer, and the bat picked up the story, telling how the remaining group had split, how Twitchtip had led them until she collapsed, how Goldshard and Snare had fought, how Gregor had taken the bane, and now we are here. Rip Red looked at them thoughtfully. "So you are. What's left of you. I'm sorry for your losses." That was the thing about Rip Red. 1 minute he was about to kill you, and the next seemed to understand it was all you could do not to curl up in a ball and die. "Just out of curiosity, Gregor, what do you expect me to do with the pup if I don't kill it?" said Rip Red. "I thought you might, kind of raise it. Everyone's so afraid of what it's going to turn into, and if Snare had gotten a hold of it, it probably would have grown up to be a monster, but maybe if you take care of it and stuff, it might turn out okay," said Gregor. "You thought I'd be its daddy?" said Rip Red, as if he hadn't heard right. "Or at least its teacher. One of the other rats could be its parent," said Gregor, "just for, 18 years or whatever." "Ha! Here's something you obviously don't know about rats," said Rip Red. "The ball of fluff over there will be full grown by the time we've seen it another winter." "But it's just a baby," said Gregor. "Only humans grow so slowly," said Ares. "It is one of their greatest weaknesses. The rest of us in the Underland mature as rats do, some even more quickly." "But how do you teach it everything it has to know?" said Gregor. "Rats learn faster than humans. And what does it really need to know? To eat, to fight, to find a mate, to hate everyone who is not a rat? It doesn't take long to learn these things," said Rip Red. "You know other things," said Gregor, "about what goes on in the Overland even." "Well, I spent a lot of time in your libraries at night," said Rip Red. "You come up and read books?" asked Gregor. "Read them, eat them, whatever mood strikes me," he said. "All right, Overlander, you may leave the pup with me. I won't kill it, but I can't promise I can teach it much. And there will be hell to pay in regalia." "I don't care," said Gregor. "If they think I'm going to do their dirty work, then they can think again." "That's the stuff, boy. You're a rager. Don't let them push you around," said Rip Red. "I am a rager," said Gregor sheepishly. "I know. It's just that there are brand new ragers and there are old veteran ragers who have fought in countless wars, and you would be," said Rip Red. "The first kind," said Gregor. "And I don't even have a sword." "How's your echolocation coming along?" asked Rip Red. "It's not," said Gregor. "I stink at it. But you'll keep practicing because you have such unflagging confidence in my judgment," said Rip Red. "Okay, Rip Red," Gregor said, too tired to get into an argument about the whole worthless echolocation thing. He stood up. "Are you going to be able to handle it? The bane, I mean?" "If it's anything like its mother, I'll have my paws full," said Rip Red. "But I'll manage." Gregor went over and patted the baby on the head. "You take care, ya hear?" The bane nuzzled his hand. "Give it this when we're gone," Gregor said, handing Rip Red the remaining candy bar. "It'll help. Ready, Ares?" Ares fluttered forward and Gregor climbed on his back. "Oh yeah, and about Twitchtip, you'll let her stay if she makes it back, right?" Oh dear, you haven't become attached to Twitch Tip, have you? Said Rip Red. As rats go, she's among our favorites, said Aries. Rip Red grinned. She can stay if she can drag her pathetic hide back here. Fly you high, you two. Run like the river, Rip Red, said Gregor. As they flew off, he looked back over his shoulder. The Bane was sitting next to Rip Red, eating the candy bar, paper and all. Maybe it would work out in the end.